Where does the word Chicano come from, and what does it mean? Piyalli nochime. My name is Kurly Tlapoyawa. I'm an archaeologist and ethohistorian specializing in Mesoamerica and the American Southwest. I'm also co-host of the podcast Tales from Aztlantis. So, where does the word Chicano come from? Well, the short and sweet answer is that it's simply a diminutive form of the word Mexicano. You see, in Mexican Spanish, we really like to mess with people's proper names, often shortening and rearranging them in an affectionate way. Linguistically, this is known as hypocorism. So, for example, Ignacio becomes Nacho, Vicente becomes Chente, Graciela becomes Chela, Mexicano becomes Chicano. But if we wanted to dig a little deeper, it gets even more interesting. The word Mexicano itself is a hybrid word. That is, a word created by combining words from two or more different languages. In this case, it is the Nahuatl word Mexico and the Spanish or Latin suffix ano. Mexico, or Mexico as it is known today, was the city-state capital of the Mexica people, and the Latin ano is a suffix used to identify a native, a citizen, or inhabitant of a particular place. So, for example, people from Italia are Italianos. People from Africa are Africanos. People from America are Americanos, and so on. So, when the Spanish first encountered the Mexica people of Mexico, they called them Mexicanos, the inhabitants of Mexico. Now, this pronunciation eventually changed to the one we're all familiar with today, Mexicano. This is because the Spanish language underwent a change called a consonant shift, and the sh sound of the letter X transformed into an aspirated H sound. So from Mexico, we get Mexicano, Mexicano then changes to Mexicano, and then from Mexicano, we get Chicano, a diminutive form of a hybrid word. As a side note, the earliest use that I have found in print during all of my research of the word Chicano, or more specifically Chicana in this case, relates to identity and comes to us from the October 10th, 1903 issue of the Socorro Chieftain. So Chicano identity is at least 121 years old. It's pretty fascinating stuff. So, what does Chicano even mean? Well, it's funny because there's a saying that if you ask 10 Chicanos what Chicano means, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. So I'm going to offer you what I know from my own lived experience, along with the historical record regarding Chicano ethnogenesis. Now, some mistakenly assume that a Chicano is simply someone of Mexican descent who was born and raised in the United States, or a Mexican who arrived in the US at a very young age and grew up here. But those things just make you Mexican American and not necessarily a Chicano. Chicano identity has a far deeper meaning than Mexican American. For the most part, Chicanos are a displaced, highly urbanized, mixed blood indigenous people whose self-declared identities are rooted in indigeneity and the struggle for self-determination and decolonization. Chicano identity is as politically charged as it is culturally assertive. We represent a cross-section of the Mesoamerican diaspora that has coalesced under a shared cultural and political identity. And it should be noted, ours is a uniquely American experience. You see, Mexico doesn't really recognize us as real Mexicans, and the United States doesn't recognize us as real Indians. So, in response, we claimed our own space for ourselves. We staked out our own identity by drawing from our collective cultural inheritance as indigenous people. Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, a beautiful, empowering declaration of indigenous identity, forged in the crucible of the struggle for civil rights and self-determination. Interestingly, we seem to get a lot of non-Chicanos trying to tell us what a Chicano is or is not. And if you know any Chicanos, then you already know that we never needed anyone's permission to be who we are. And so I would like to end with a quote from the book The Adventures of Don Chipote by Daniel Venegas, which was originally published in 1928. It reads, and I quote, "As you all know, Chicanos, for the most part, are full of warm, indigenous blood. And once someone calls their pride into question, or they call their own hearts into question, that's when they give it their all, until they can't give anymore. And that is why every day I wake up and I give thanks to Tlaloc that I am Chicano. Y que."